With 3 district seats up for grabs, people in Boston were expecting change last year on the city council, but maybe the most dramatic change was the election of a new councilor at large, the council's first Latina and immigrant from the Dominican Republic. So it was no surprise that her first speech as a city councilor drew attention to the needs of many Boston immigrants. We'd like to welcome Councilor at large, Julia Mejia. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about your choice of topic, because this was about the definition of Boston is a sanctuary city, and you felt essentially that this needs to be expanded. So what did you have in mind?
Well, you know, I feel like we talk about Boston being a sanctuary city, but I think that when you talk to different people, they have different definitions of what a sanctuary city or safe space looks like. And I think what I have come to learn is that it means different things to different people depending on who you ask. So the whole idea of convening people across lived experience, people who are working in the space, Boston Public Schools, the police department, activist groups, and people who are undocumented, I felt it was important for us to convene all voices so that we could define for ourselves what is a sanctuary safe space and where are the opportunities for us to define for ourselves, and then be really clear about policies and procedures that we're going to put in place so that people can feel safe in Boston. And right now, I don't think that that's the sentiment.
Some of this involves space in buildings. So what do you think that should be like?
Well, right now, you know, we talk about Boston Public Schools. I think that we need to have expanding it into libraries, the Boston Youth and Family Centers, you know, any space where is owned by the city of Boston. I also think that, you know, some of the health centers, the Boston Public Health Commission, there are a lot of different spaces right now where people don't feel safe walking into and or out of, and I think that we have an opportunity to define what those spaces are. I'm thinking more about the children. There are a lot of young people, and then the other piece of it's not just around defining the space, but also looking at some of the policies that are not being upheld. I mean, the fact that I learned recently is that even parents don't even know when their students' information is being shared with BRIC, where incidents reports have been written up, and even students nor the parents know about it. So I think it goes beyond safe spaces, but really looking at how information sharing is happening across city agencies.
And I know the information about that shared information came out just a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
City officials saying, well, we're trying to clamp down on that even more than we did before. And you know, we're all in sympathy with this mission of protecting immigrants. Where is the disconnect?
Yeah, no, I heard from the mayor's office is that some of the data was outdated, and so that there had been already some provisions put in place through the Trust Act. So there was some gaps there, but I think that the disconnect really is that the form of communication. I think that people aren't, the information is not trickling down into the community, and I think that this is where the opportunity lies.
I'm going to ask you what it was like when you made your first speech, because lots of people in Boston go to City Hall whether they like to or not.
Yeah.
I'm one of them, you're one of them.
Yeah.
How did it feel to be up there the first time just giving a speech in the council chamber?
Yeah, well, you know, most people who know me know that I speak from my heart, so I'm unscripted. But it was such a nerve-wracking situation that I really wanted to make sure that I didn't miss a data point, and that I was really clear in setting the tone in terms of why we were doing this. So I was reading from the script, and there were times when Councilor President Janey was telling me to stand up straight because I didn't know that the microphone was going to pick up everything. So I was hutching over, and so it was nerve-wracking. But at the same time, I thought it was the best way for me to lead with something that I'm deeply committed to, something that is from my own lived experience. What was really disheartening, though, is that, you know, I got some pushback from some folks already. I got some hate voicemails, and people were not happy with the fact that I was leading with something like that. So it was pretty interesting.
Well, you're putting a spotlight on people in the city, and you made some people feel uncomfortable, or they gave you some kickback. But do you think that accomplished something?
Well, you know, Chris, like for me, I've always said that for me, it's not just about calling people out, it's about calling people in, right? And even the people who aren't who had an adverse reaction to what I'm proposing. I think it's an opportunity for us to have one conversation in Boston, because oftentimes we're always in conflict with each other, and even though we don't agree on everything, we can agree without being disagreeable. And I think this is an opportunity for us to bring in some folks who have a different, diverse experience and also an opinion, because I think it's important to create space for all voices to be heard. So it's not just about protecting the undocumented community, but it's also creating space for people who may not feel so friendly to that idea, to bring them into the conversation as well.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with City Councilor at Large, Julia Mejia. You were talking about bringing people into the conversation when you were still campaigning,
yeah.
And it's nice to bring them to the City Council chamber. That's not always easy for people, especially if hearings are in the daytime, so you had some ideas about changing that. Yeah, so
I campaigned on that my first hearing was going to be on public hearings. And then a week into my job, my first hearing order is on the safe spaces sanctuaries. And so I still am very committed to hosting a hearing on public hearings and really looking at the level of engagement that exists across boards and commissions, and really looking at all the different opportunities that we have as city government to hear the voices of the people. So that is on my deck, and definitely a priority for me. We've already been to Austin, Brighton, West Roxbury, and Dorchester in terms of civic association meetings. And so for us, we're really about engagement and creating space for people to also come in. So I'm looking forward to that being my next order of business.
Also, somewhat related to your campaign issues, was an attempt just recently by City Councilor Lydia Edwards to look into possible charter reform. That's a big catch-all that could include changing representation on the school committee.
Absolutely.
You campaigned for an elected school committee.
Right.
Why did you want that?
Well, because, you know, I think we're in a different time now here in the city of Boston, and it's important for those who are living the realities and doing the work to have an opportunity to represent in the school committee. I think that this whole notion that it gets appointed by the mayor undermines that process, and I think that if we're really serious about democracy, then having an elected school board is the way to go. And I also think that revising the charter is a great opportunity for us to give the people back the city.
I want to ask you about the infamous comments yesterday by Governor Baker. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley made a speech denouncing hate speech and defending the use of identity politics, at least in an inclusive way. The governor said that rant, it sounded to me, even in print, like he didn't really mean that, did he? But you were there. How did he?
Oh, I mean, as soon as he said it, I went to Twitter. I'm like, excuse me, Charlie, that was far from a rant. She was waxing political poetics to everyone. I think that I had an adverse reaction to it. I felt like it minimized the content of what she was sharing with us, and I felt like it was a teachable moment for Charlie to recognize that, especially in these times, that it was not a good look for him to minimize the content of what Ayanna was sharing with us. And also, it hit home because as a woman of color, you know, these are the sort of situations that we always find ourselves in, is that we're passionate, or, you know, we have to tone it down so that other people can feel comfortable, and minimizing her comments that way. I don't think that was his intention, but, you know, you have to look at intent versus impact, and the impact that it had, not just on me, but everyone that was there. There was some rumblings as soon as he called it a rant. Everyone had an adverse reaction to it.
Of course, another way to put this into perspective is that when Donald Trump holds a rally, he talks with a lot of impassioned, maybe lack of control about all different kinds of things. And I seldom hear anybody say it was a rant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say is that every time number 45 opens up his mouth, that's what it feels like. And you can't even follow half of the things that he's saying. And what Ayanna was talking about was real, and the things that we experience every single day as people of color. And I felt like, you know, we needed to hear that, and it was far from a rant.
Finally, one other issue, and I'm sure just about everybody in the city maybe thinks it's the most pressing thing, and that's housing. Anything about what you'd like to accomplish with that on the council?
Yeah, so last week I participated in the State House hearings and the rally. And so I am all on board for rent control. I think especially participating in some of the Neighborhood Civic Association meetings last week, it felt like in every single meeting everybody was talking about development, right? And the process of how it goes about being presented to us in our community. And I feel like this is an area in terms of my civic engagement work that we have an opportunity to flip that concept of how things get developed in our neighborhoods on its head. I think that Boston is a city that is rich in resources and poor in coordination, and we need to do a better job at deciding what is going to get built and how in our city.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
City Councilor at Large.
Thank you.
Julia Mejia. We'll have more news in just a moment.